Yeah. So you and I had just started touching on this topic of John Vervaeke and how he says, he talks about the so-called meaninglessness or the meaning crisis, cited 80% of UK respondents to a survey said their life is meaningless. Um, and he talks about zombies as like a prevalent, as a myth of our time, like a meaningful story. And you were starting to talk about zombies and meaningless. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, I was thinking of, yeah, since he's addressing like that sense of people losing meaning, I think maybe the zombie is kind of like one of the ultimate figures kind of expressing that. So like I thought like a zombie is mindless and it really has no future and it's something that's all forgotten about its past. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like completely mindful. It's living completely in the present, but in like this, yeah, no, not exactly in an enlightened sort of
mhm,
spiritual kind of way.
mm, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
they're
just
always hungry and they eat
mm,
the very organ that produces thoughts and makes plans and helps us to form larger bonds, like
mm,
not just with our kin, but with like
yeah,
other people in society and even across societies and
yeah,
across time periods.
yeah, and like yeah, it has no connection to like what it once was. And then if you want in like every zombie movie that causes pain to the people around it. So it's kind of like fractures families and stuff in those movies.
Yeah,
Uh
I mean,
like
just
not
like
like in
any
a
other sort of
yeah,
consumer or something. But I
yeah.
think more salient is the fact that they're this, yeah, this ultimate consumer. They're just constantly consuming, never satiated, even when they have like body parts missing. And yeah, they have no, they pay no attention to their own safety and they have no identity. They're just like this mouth that's constantly
Mhm.
moving forward, like Pac-Man, like chopping at the world, chopping at human beings and destroying other human beings' ability to to have a meaningful life, to make
Mhm.
a society that's worth living in, and uh, you know, even taking care of basic safety and everything, making art, doing the things that sort of make us specifically human and that are expressions of our humanity. What do you think? And also I mentioned from that same little, that same talk of his, Vervaeke, that uh, a lot of people think that their lives are somewhat purposeless. Uh, Many of them said it's because of finances, even though studies show that there's not much connection between wealth and meaning after you're out of poverty. So there's confusion about the reason that people are lonely and don't have purpose. What do you think about that?
Mhm. Yeah, it seems like that confusion, it's maybe just a sign of, like you said, just how consumeristic and materialistic we become, that it's kind of connected because you're lacking in another kind of material in life. Uh, so yeah, maybe that's part of the confusion. Maybe like lots of people think it's because they need more of like something material. Uh, and
Hmm.
that kind of, yeah, and of course that's kind of masking then like the reasons, the deeper reasons that have nothing to do with material things.
Hmm.
they're kind of being happy or
Yeah, that's a
having
good point.
that,
When they try to think about a way out of meaninglessness, they can only think of like really of basic needs of of things that provide basic needs and
yeah,
consumption kinds of desires.
yeah. So the question just becomes in people's minds like, what more do I need? What more can I have?
Yeah.
And that's probably missing the point.
Yeah, Vervaeke also talks about how people try to have things, try to get
Mhm,
things in order to satisfy uh, needs of being. So
mhm,
people need to be things like to be happy, fulfilled, connected, uh, transcend, but they don't they don't do things to be, they do things to have. So
mhm,
we do have needs also, if that makes sense. Like we do need some food, shelter,
mhm,
transportation, things like that, means of subsistence. But when we're trying to get our being needs met by having things, by getting things, that's not really going to work.
mhm.
Another word, one word that's thrown around a lot nowadays is anxiety. And he talks about the difference between, like lots of people say they have anxiety, but he talks about how there's a difference between existential anxiety and psychological anxiety. And obviously they can coincide as well.
Mhm.
You might have psychological anxiety, palpitations, and, you know, uh,
Mm.
nervousness and things because you have existential anxiety. But yeah, I thought that was interesting to bring up.
Mm. Yeah, I hadn't really heard of existential anxiety before. Uh, so that sounds like an interesting concept.
But that's of course,
Yeah.
related to lack of purpose or feeling a lack
Hmm.
of purpose or
Hmm.
wanting purpose, fear of death, fear of a meaningless death, maybe fear of a lonely death too, fear of an unconnected death, which I think purpose has to do with connection to history, the future, a people, your family at least, a cause, feeling useful. Yeah, I would wonder if also people are misattributing uh, existential anxiety to psychological anxiety.
Hmm. And, well, I think yeah, you've brought up that he mentions a lot of confusion. So I would think that's the case then, because people are still confused about where that anxiety is coming from.
I mean, we need education or vocabulary and things, or if we have inability to talk about or think about some things or discuss some things.
Mm.
Do you think traditional religions are providing that education and that vocabulary nowadays?
Well, I think they did, and they still do, but it seems like it's for a select number of people now. Uh,
What do you mean? Do you think it's falling on deaf ears?
yeah, but you're more maybe that, but maybe it's just a lot of people are just dissatisfied now with traditional religion.
Why?
So I feel like it's why.
Mhm. You don't think their message has been more and more watered down to accommodate the sort of superficial, individualistic kind of consumer culture?
Yeah, I think maybe that happened. Like I'm thinking of some parts of Christianity, like those mega preachers that are super wealthy and like
Prosperity gospel.
yeah, prosperity gospel. So I'm thinking of that. So maybe it's watered down, and this is kind of maybe conflicting or paradox sounding. So it's watered down, and at the same time, maybe not adapting with the times in some ways.
Well, if they're
Uh,
mega churches, they're certainly popular.
yeah, they are. Um,
Are you just
but
saying
I guess in my
giving us
mind,
what
I
we
was
want, not what we need?
yeah. So in my mind, at the same time, I was thinking of the Catholic Church, which is on the very far end of not bending at all.
So
Uh, yeah. Yeah, so I think there's both, maybe both ends of the spectrum going on. And
do you believe in
that's
transubstantiation? Do you believe that the the wafer of bread given during the communion really is the body of Christ?
uh, well, at the time I want to believe it. So
Yeah,
that's what I was just thinking of when I was in church. Uh,
no comment.
so
I
oh
don't,
God.
I don't want to out you. I don't want you to
Uh,
get excommunicated.
well,
Especially
like I think my mindset was, hey, I don't know about the literal part, but I'll just go with it.
you'll nod along, but not nod off.
Yeah, but not like in a way where I'm like doubting or like skeptical, but more like at this moment, I'll just accept that. And it's kind of hard to explain. Um,
That sounds like you're just going along with something without, maybe you don't feel the need to question it, but do you not think that's, I don't know, could be a problem? Not knowing, do
mm,
you know what you think? Or you don't really think it's a matter to think about?
well, I think at the time, like I wasn't really like I know there were so much arguments about transubstantiation, but it just wasn't really important to me, really. What what it really was.
You do
Or,
feel like you are in the presence of God and receiving God.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, like regardless of whether it is or not, like that, it still felt sacred to me. So I'm
Yeah.
not, I wasn't, I think I just wasn't so caught up in that transubstantiation debate.
The sort of argument and specific
Yeah,
and things.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Vervaeke argues a lot about, yeah, sort of we identify with belief, and including in religion, religious people often, yeah, identify with belief, or and I was kind of doing this like debate belief rather than faith, but it seems like from you have, yeah, a sense of, and not just the thought of, but also maybe the feeling of the sacred, the divine. And so that's kind of the point, not a specific theological argument about the nature of physical reality and all that stuff.
yeah. You've put it in much better words than I could express, but that sounds like it.
Yeah, I just realized as you were talking that, well, I was thinking about going one way with the argument of sort of like trying to nail you down on belief. And then I started thinking about, yeah, that what I just said about Vervaeke's teaching, and my own sort of thoughts and things. And yeah, that wasn't the point. Yeah, it's more the point. Yeah, faith, virtue, the sacred, the divine. Yeah, simplicity. Simplicity is, thinking of like some things about Jesus's teaching, like have the faith of a child, or even like in psychology, you and I have talked about Paul Conti's sort of in the Lex Friedman interview, he kept saying that, this is a psychiatrist who has a lot of experience and is reflective and broadly educated. And he says that, and in reflecting, he feels like he's in reflecting on mental health and what produces mental health and is characteristic of it, he's always coming back to simplicity. And conversely, for mental illness, you're always coming back to complexity, over complexity, overthinking, um, unnecessary kinds of concepts and identifications. I think, you can think of like the neurotic intellectual or something like that, as opposed to like the wise philosopher. Both of them are sophisticated, but yeah, one of them is, seems more akin to the overly complex, and one of them seems more akin to the simple. Another thing from that short Vervaeke lecture was, and he talks about, he's talking about sort of social trends in this, meaning crisis society. And he talked about escape into virtual worlds. And you and I talked about this a little bit before, like with video games, they have a clear narrative in which you play a pivotal role. There are rules and they make sense of that world. If you follow those rules, the world unfolds in a way that makes sense, and you know how to level up, and you know how to transcend your current identity, your current level, which is kind of interesting using that word. But I think in spiritual matters, or even psychological health, we're kind of looking to transcend our current perspective, our current framing of our lives and the situation, in order to gain insight and to become happier, better, more compassionate, more virtuous people. But it's interesting, there's a way to do something like that in video games that is known, and part and parcel with that, while playing video games, you can get into a flow state, which is an intense state of being at one with something outside of yourself. So it's kind of interesting that maybe the reason we have such a problem with people playing video games too much and getting addicted to them, and maybe being unproductive or not participating in their lives, is because the video games are providing so much of what we need psychologically, and that we're not getting, and that is harder to get in the real world, which is much more complex, and even more complex now than it used to be, with sort of maybe a more chaotic society.
Yeah, it's like I went to virtual reality game rooms, and it was just amazing what they could do now with video games.
More realistic.
Yeah, like I had like they had you like at an hour at those games, and it just went by very quickly. Like I could see as it becomes more prolific, like people wanting to do this for hours a day.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that world. I mean, I have a glimpse of it now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you think about that, though? I know you know people who play a lot of video games.
Well,
obviously, the video games aren't going to get worse.
yeah, no, they're only going to get better.
but I wonder if the real world can get better too and have a good have a good alternative to the virtual world.
Well,
Not
it's like a,
easier, but more satisfying.
yeah. And I'm not really sure about that. It seems the world's only getting better for making these things better and
Well, yeah,
not like our
I don't
actual
think the question
trend.
is, will the virtual worlds not get
Yeah,
better? They will definitely get better.
yeah,
Video games will get better and everything will get cheaper. But can the real world get, uh, can the real world compete with it? And I think it can. I
yeah,
think things can be
yeah,
more satisfying and they're more real. Like people know
yeah,
this is the real world. You know, we're not getting into metaphysics right now in this the
yeah.
veil of Maya, but
I don't know, but do you think maybe there's some confusion too about what better means now as well?
mhm. Yeah, of course. I mean, we have a more superficial, maybe understanding of it
Yeah,
being something like pleasure.
yeah, or like I feel like when lots of people talk about progress or just better, it just means better technology or
Well, that's even narrower,
uh
yes.
yeah,
But
or
yeah, I mean, we need good
yeah,
discourse.
yeah,
But most people, when they think of a better world, they don't just think of better technology, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I think maybe lots of people it still means maybe things just less suffering or less unnecessary suffering,
Yeah. But what I
and
mean is,
things
can
like
we,
that.
yeah, have a conversation about making a better world that is able to, for like people in the developed, rich world, to that is better for that feels good enough for them to not want to escape as much into these virtual worlds, to want to have a satisfying real life, participating in society, having family, you know, having
Yeah.
actual achievements, not ones through video games.
Yeah, I guess I think so. It's just going to be work, I guess. Yeah, like yeah, and yeah, they'll
But
just
any idea of what that place will look like?
oh like a better world. Well, I think addressing the anxiety crisis. So uh yeah, it's a very complicated for what the answer is, but I think that a better world will see like a reduction in that the mental health problems and
Another trend is Stoicism.
mhm,
Uh, do you think that? Why do you think that's so popular?
mhm. Well, like when I've been on social media, I see like it seems a lot of young men are gravitating to it in particular. Uh, so I think maybe it's young men like still looking for an answer. Maybe that's why it's been
Mhm.
kind of exploding a lot. Uh, and you know, it's not just young men, but that's the demographic I've seen a lot, like posting stoicism stuff. Uh,
Any idea why? Though?
because currently there hasn't really been anything for young men. Like, like we talked about it, like role model a little bit, like positive male role models, or maybe just a place where they're not always criticized by like some feminists, things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, I think that's why.
We started talking about this one time. Do you think people really want the the real in their lives? Do you think they want to feel like their life is real? And do you think they don't feel like their life is quite real sometimes?
Um,
I
I
wonder if
feel
this is
like
related to
some,
zombies too.
I don't know, because real kind of means pain and discomfort at times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know if it's for everyone, but I would say maybe for a good chunk of people, they don't really mean it. Uh, so, uh, yeah, I'm
I
not
mean, like,
sure.
again, I'm always bringing up Vervaeke, but he gives this example of that people do what people want does involve the truth. What they really want does involve
Mhm,
the truth, because he gives the example of asking his class. Let's say you're in a really good relationship with a significant other. Everything's going great. Everything feels great, but um, there's two versions of this story. In both of them, the partner is cheating on you. Uh, this sort of like going into the matrix or something. Do you take the blue
mhm,
pill or the red pill? Would you want to go into the version where it's happening but you'll never know, you'll never get hurt by it? Or do you want to know? And he says
mhm,
most of his students say they would want to know, even if
mhm,
like it would have no impact
mhm,
otherwise.
mhm.
I mean, wouldn't you want to know if you're living a lie? I mean, there's science fiction movies about this, right? Like
Yeah,
the beginning of
yeah, I would.
what's that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie?
Mhm,
The Running Man, I think. But anyway, yeah, he's living this idyllic life, or like the Truman shows like this. Like people don't want to be a fool in their life.
mhm.
You know?
Yeah, like when you put it that way, like I'll actually backtrack, and I think maybe most people actually do want to still. Like, I don't think we've gotten to a point where
I
then we're
mean,
like
yeah, do you
people
think
want
people
to.
are scared, but that doesn't mean they don't really want it?
Yeah,
You
I
think
think
they have
we
some fear.
maybe scared or hesitant. Maybe it might take a while, but I think then like eventually they want to get to the truth.
Yeah, there was this Northern European movie. I can't remember what it was, but this guy went up to this like remote town in like the tundra kind of area, but like all of his needs are met. Like he is given this job with a really good salary where he basically doesn't have to do anything all day, so
Mm,
he's super competent. He gets this girlfriend, and she's really good looking, and she will have sex with him immediately,
mm,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He has this nice place. But of course, the easier all that stuff is to get, the faster the movie gets to the point where he's just wondering what's the point.
mm,
Life is not has no color. The relationships, the job, everything, there's no meaning to any of it.
mm. So,
Of course, this is sort of the mirror version of like living in some kind of hellscape where you know you're you're fighting to the death for scraps of moldy bread, to get back to your job, literally breaking rocks or something,
mm,
in chains, sleeping in rusty, you know, uh, disease filled barracks
mm,
night after night after night, something like
mm,
that. But I almost want the second version though, because at least you feel like in that world there's a perimeter to the camp, and there's a
mm,
border to that country. And if you go far enough, you can get out of that place and find some sort of place, a forest
mm.
or some country where you can have something like a normal life. In the first scenario, maybe they'd be too comfortable
Mm.
to quite make the trek out of that tundra kind of village. This reminds me of like a parody, or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, where Mark Twain, through Huckleberry Finn, he parodies sort of the simplicity of some Christians' kind of view of heaven, of like being just sort of like, I don't know, some version of where you're just singing in an angelic choir, floating around carrying a harp all day, sort of the idea like it's a world of no suffering, uh, and no sort of purpose either, sort of some mirror version of hell. And of course, I know one teaching I was given in Catholic school was that uh, the kingdom of heaven that Jesus talks about, or heaven, is a sort of it's one meant with God, one meant with the divine, which, as a sinful being, you're always kept from. In Christianity, you can go to heaven after death, but there's no heaven on earth, I guess, at least in this version that I'm thinking of. Unlike, say, in like Buddhism, where even though it's very rare, there is the idea of enlightenment while you're still alive. But what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds similar to my idea of what heaven was when I was in my Catholic stuff. Yeah, I said the same thing. It's just unity with God. Like, it's not about clouds or angels, or like, stereotypical depictions are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've kind of wondered or thought a bit of what does that look like, though, that union?
Well, I would think, I mean, doesn't the divine have work to do here on earth? And so wouldn't you be like an angel that's doing that or something, trying to ease the suffering, i.e., the not one minute, the distance from God that most mortal beings, and especially some, have.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I thought maybe it's that, or I've wondered if maybe it's just kind of being maybe just part of some like universal consciousness or something.
Universal what?
Consciousness, like mass conscious. Yeah, I think maybe I imagined it more like that in my mind.
You want to join the Borg of God. Do you know that reference from Star Trek?
No, but it sounds kind of cool. What is it?
Well, the Borg is this like sort of artificial, uh, this AI hive mind kind of civilization that just goes around the universe, swallowing up other civilizations and incorporating their technology, and assimilating their conscious beings into their hive mind. They're like some of the most popular and my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Well, that's kind of scary sounding.
Yes, hive. Yes, but
yeah,
sometimes
I don't know.
extremes often converge, and I wonder if your, oneness with the consciousness of God is a little bit like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess maybe I was looking at the nice side of it, not the scary side of it. But yeah, that's kind of been how I've imagined it a lot.
But you wouldn't necessarily be ready for that for a long time, right? Even after death. I mean, Catholic doctrine has one being in purgatory to purge one's sin, right? And isn't the meaning of like in the Bible, like don't they talk about how you cannot view God? You would die if you saw him directly, because
I remember.
Yeah, he's so much more superior. So I don't think you could merge with the consciousness of God right away, right? You're not ready. You're not worthy, you're not ready. That's sort of how like there's a identification between the moral and and uh, like moral truth and act and literal truth or existence, the true and the good.
Yeah, have you thought of what that union might mean?
I don't necessarily believe in that,
Yeah.
so not so much. Um, except I sort of view it as like good or useful for thinking about these things, you know,
Mhm.
God, the good, truth and beauty and things. But I don't know if I'm like a Platonist in that I do believe in, yeah, coming closer to these things. Do I believe in their actual existence? Not sure. But I do believe in, yeah, getting closer to them through contemplation and discussion. And I do believe there's like benefits, there's salutary effects to
Mm.
contemplation, to understanding, help you gain insight, be less egotistical. Yeah. But for me, it's not so much philosophical, it's not so much theological as
Mhm.
philosophical.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm I'm interested in participating in these discussions in this society. We're talking about trying to refine our terms and our understanding and advance our insight and, you know, transform and transcend. Okay. Well, anything else you want to talk about?
Mhm. Fine. Like I noticed right after you asked.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll try again next week.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, talk to you soon.